Hi there, I'm Wendy McCallum, burnout and alcohol coach and wellness expert, and you're listening to Bite Size Balance, where everyday extraordinary women share their stories, expertise, and wisdom, all in the name of lifting each other up and creating a better life by design. Whether it's wellness, career, relationships, food, alcohol, mindfulness, hormones, or parenting, we talk about all things women's balance. If your life looks great on paper, but it still feels like something's missing, you're in the right place. Welcome to Bite Size Balance. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Bite Size Balance. I'm here today with Susan Hodgson. Hi, Susan.
Hi. Thanks for having me, Wendy.
I'm so glad to have you here. I'm going to do a little intro on Susan. So this is actually Susan's intro, and I'm telling you that because Susan's quite funny and she wrote this herself, so I can't take credit for it. Susan is an Irish expat certified coach helping women navigate new territory with their drinking amidst the challenges of living abroad and trying to find that elusive feeling of home. She lives near Paris with her French husband and 3 kids who enjoy correcting her grammar and complaining about holidays back to the Donegal rain. I probably did not pronounce that right, did I? How do you pronounce that? Is it Donegal? Donegal.
No, Donegal.
Donegal.
Got to get right. You got the rain right anyway, so that's
the rain right. Yeah. So they're just complaining about having to go back to Ireland for their holidays because that's, yeah, I get it. Okay. So Susan and I know each other because we're both coaches, but Susan's also part of my business program for coaches. And so I'm getting to know her a little bit there. And Susan and I were talking about what we thought might be an interesting topic for the podcast. And Susan raised this idea of expats and this concept of home in midlife. And I thought, oh yeah, that'll be such an interesting thing to talk about. So we're going to talk about that because Susan is a bit displaced, right? As an Irish person living in France. And, we were talking about the parallels for a lot of women in midlife who might not have physically moved countries, but who are just going through massive transitions that are impacting their feeling of being home and being grounded, whether that's empty nesting or downsizing, or maybe even transitioning into retirement. So Susan, you're a relatively new coach. Is this something that you're doing full time now?
No, not at the moment. No, I'm coaching in my spare time, whenever that is. And then I have 3 kids, twins, and a teenager.
Ooh, I don't think I knew you had twins. How old are your twins?
My twins are 9. They just turned 9.
Wow. Yeah.
Going on 19, So we've got the 3 of them.
That's a lot. That is a lot.
That's a full-time job in itself, yes.
For sure. I have, as you might know, I have 2 kids who are 7 months apart. So they're not technically twins, but they might as well be. And they've been in the same grade their whole lives. So I get that. I can only imagine how much busier it would have been with another one in the mix. So
Irish twins.
Yeah.
One straight after the other.
Exactly. We both have Irish twins. You actually have Irish twins and I have Irish twins in quotes. How did you end up moving to France and when did that happen?
Well, I'm what you call a lifer because I'm settled here now. It's been a while. I came actually, when I left college, it was in the late 90s. And it was kind of, the question wasn't like, what are you going to do? It was more kind of, where are you going to go now? So I think it's it's part of the Irish culture. Like we've just got this huge diaspora. But so I kind of moved around a little bit. I went to Spain a bit. I went to Germany a bit. And I had no direction in my life apart from like the airport every now and again. And I ended up coming to France to visit my sister who was here at the time. And I was on holidays and just happened to meet someone who knew someone who was looking for an assistant. And so I met this person and I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I was in my 20s, as you do, kind of. Let's give this a go. And if I don't like it, I'll just go somewhere else, And so I had my job, my first job in Paris, which was kind of I'm not even sure what kind of an affair it was. I worked there for like a month. I got paid in a brown paper bag, and they were like, "Don't answer the phones." So So I made it. I arrived in Paris and I basically just made it, you know. So yeah, so that was like my first taste. And while I was there, I met all these like great people, all foreigners as well. But we had this great social life. And so we were like, I just, you know, and the time went on, I got a more serious job, and like we were all getting a little bit older. And I met my husband, and that sort of, you know, that notion I had in the back of my head that I can pack up the backpack and off I go, you know, anytime sort of dissolved, you know, the longer I was here. And I sort of realized one day, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you know, got into my 30s and life got more serious, and we settled down, relatively speaking, and had Liam, our first, and then surprise, had the twins. So yeah, and can't believe it's like over 20 years now I've been here, you know.
Yeah, it's funny how time flies, doesn't it? It's like those, I feel like I hear this all the time from women, the settling down parenting years just fly by. And
Yeah,
I remember being young and feeling like time was going so slowly, and it just feels like it has a completely different meaning when we get into our 30s and 40s. So tell me about the drinking part of the story. Was that something that has always been there? I mean, we have, obviously there are lots of stereotypes. I'm throwing my good friend Talbot Sweeney under the bus here, who's an Irishman, but some stereotypes around drinking and Irish and the Irish. And so was that something that you had kind of struggled with from earlier on, or is that something that developed once you made the move, or can you pinpoint that?
Well, I didn't struggle with it because I didn't like feel there was any problem with it, even though I've always been like, I was always a drinker in inverted commas, you know, but I felt like that was very much part of my identity. And so did other people, being an expat as well. I think that's what a lot of people thought was part of my identity as well. Oh, you're Irish, you love a pint, you know, oh, right. You're Irish, you know, you all like drinking, don't you? That sort of thing, which kind of annoys you at the time, but you're kind of like, well, yeah, I do anyway. So, you know, and so, like our social life was all around, you know, going out and going to the bars and having parties, and you know, moving from that like party sort of lifestyle to, well, I'm in France, so now I can move to the more sophisticated drinking and develop my wine, you know, tastes and expertise and all that. So alcohol was always a part of my life from one of like my teens through to my like late 40s when I quit drinking, and it was always there. So it was always part of my identity and nothing I ever questioned, you know. And I think, you know, we're talking about, you know, how it felt to move and things like that, and then it occurred to me that I never felt quite so foreign as when I stepped into that identity as a mom when I first got pregnant, and when we were first parents. I mean, it's it's navigating again new territory. Like, it's all great fun when you're in your 20s and you no responsibility, but then you step into this new territory again in a different country with a different language, and like trying to do it right, you know, the pressure we all have to do, especially with parenting, like, you've got to get it right, it's got to be perfect. And then you have all these messages from home of this is how you do it because that's what you saw, and then you're in this other country with well, this is how we do it, and you're sort of in the middle kind of going, but that's how I should be doing it, but I'm doing it wrong because I'm not doing it like that, and they're doing it wrong because they're doing it like that, you know, things like breastfeeding and you know, how you give birth. So like everybody here has an epidural, and like my friends back home were like, oh, you're having an epidural, and you know, things like that, and how long you breastfeed and things like that. And so you get this sort of feeling like you're sort of torn between the two worlds, you know, that you're never quite doing it right, you know.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah.
yeah, and then the language, of course, you know, you can just sort of, it's a whole new vocabulary.
So
One has to watch a lot of,
can you speak French now? Are you fluent?
well, yes, I speak French on a daily basis, and I would have said I'm fluent, except I still make mistakes, and
Sure.
but
Yeah. And
yeah,
that's
my
hard.
kids.
Do you find it hard in Paris to be a non-native French speaker? Do you find I've had my own personal experiences with that. I'm just curious what your experiences are.
Well, I still get like I open my mouth, I just say hello, and someone goes, "Oh, where are you from?" So okay, I'm never gonna get the accent right, and my kids have developed this game where they have the gender in French, the le and the la,
Mhm.
and they have this game where they switch them round to see if maman spots it.
Oh dear.
So they get a point. One of them, they get a point if I spot it, or if I don't spot it, nobody.
Funny.
Anyway, so it's quite
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah, that would be very disconcerting. I hadn't thought of that. The differences in the cultural differences in parenting and trying to negotiate those as someone who's sort of got one foot in each world.
Mm.
Yeah. And so at what point did you start questioning the drinking? Because you said for a long time it just felt like the way it was and not a big deal.
Yeah. I think the farther I got into motherhood, the more sort of pressure I was putting on myself to get it all perfect. I felt torn between like home here and feeling that I wasn't tending enough to the Irish side of my like being, and that my family back home and that sort of thing. And I think I was judging everything I was doing.
Mhm.
and like people pleasing myself to death and just trying to get it all right. And that lonely feeling sort of crept in, feeling like, I'm not doing it right, I'm not getting it right, and what's wrong with me. And I think with the exhaustion that came as well, with having 3 kids that didn't sleep, and working full time, and all that, I really started to use like my nightly wine as that was my treat.
Mhm.
It was my alone time as well. Like when everybody was finally in bed,
Mhm.
when it was quiet, because I'm very sensitive to noise, and I like I didn't realize at the time because I was just plowing through.
Right.
And I'm quite introverted. I need like all that noise and all that sort of people hanging off you kind of really does take it out of me. I'm aware of that now, but I wasn't at the time, and I would just plow through. So this like sort of precious time, if you like, at the end of the day when everybody was in bed, was like, oh, now I can breathe, and now it's quiet. And well, it was quiet apart from that of me
The
opening the
cork.
wine.
Yeah. I totally
So
relate to that. I totally relate to that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think that's when, and then I realized like, well, listen, I'm exhausted, and this is making me even more exhausted.
Mm.
And then, yourself, and you go, right, well, so I'm not going to drink tonight. And then you inevitably end up with the glass of wine in your hand, and you're like, oh, I said I wasn't going to do this. And you realize, yeah, this is harder than I thought it was going to be.
Mm.
And I don't understand why. And so then again, what's wrong with me? I can't do this, and I'm not doing it right.
Mhm.
And so that's and that's where I started reading all the books and the podcasts. I was continually with the thing in my ear and reading all the books and going, absolutely, absolutely, yes, I totally agree. And yet still like with my glass of red wine.
Sure. Me
At the
too.
end of the day, this is absolutely the alcohol industry. And then,
Yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah.
And so when I found like a community this naked mind and that community. That's when I was like, oh, I'm not the only one who thinks they're a loser at whatever midnight, saying I should go to bed now, but I can't because I'm afraid of waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I'm just prolonging the agony, And so when I found that sort of community, and people who were saying like out loud, this isn't serving me anymore, but I don't quite know how to, make that change, how to do that. I was like, oh, people say that out loud, so it was a huge revelation to me. And then I was alcohol free sort of 6 months later, but it wasn't even 6 months later. And just super happy about it, just like, yay, get through that sort of that challenging time of like questioning everything and becoming aware of what is happening in your own head and in your own body. And then it's like, yeah, all systems go. And then I just, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I was just wondering, what did you do at night when to replace the drinking? It's just a question that I get asked all the time from the women that I work with, and I'm sure you do too. People really want to know, because you can't just take the alcohol away and not replace that, fill that need, in some other way. So I'm just curious, what was your experience with that, and what did you learn about what it was you really needed at night?
Well, first I really needed sleep. that was like, I was exhausted. But I know what you mean. It was and at the very beginning, it was the coming home and like not stopping off at the wine shop. And like not hearing that pop, that not having the chilled whatever in the fridge, So there was I planned a lot. I had like yummy alternatives. I didn't have sort of alcohol-free wines or alcohol-free beers or anything like that. I had like delicious drinks in the fridge, and I had a pretty glass to put them in. And I had because I would come home and do the exact same things, but you have that association of like, I'm cooking dinner, I have a glass of wine, I'm eating cheese, I need a red wine. How can you have a camembert without a glass of red wine? It's sacrilege,
especially in France.
Oh my goodness, people.
I don't know how. Yeah,
but it's practice, and it's that working on all that like neuroplasticity and change, just feeling that kind of the automatic hand going towards the glass and go, oh, hang on a second, that is just habit. I have this, like my brain is telling me it's time now. It's time for that glass of red, and it's uncomfortable and it's annoying, and it's like it made me grumpy. Some days I was just like, for God's sake, this is ridiculous. It's not that bad, but it's becoming aware of all those feelings, which I had completely ignored for like my entire life.
Yeah.
Like I was.
Yeah. I think a big part of it for a lot of moms, for a lot of mothers who are feeling that way at the end of the day is, or really, honestly, anyone who's feeling that way at the end of the day, is actually being able to articulate the discomfort. You just admit the discomfort, because I think we use alcohol so often just as a way to just not even acknowledge that there's anything not going right. That's certainly what I was doing with it. I wasn't aware at all until I took it away, I don't think, of what I had been using it for. And so how did you find, because you said you were using it to kind of as a treat, a reward, as a way to sort of cope and unwind, I think, and get a break, I assume, at the end of the day. So how would you, how do I ask this? How are you getting that reward, that break, that thing that you needed now without alcohol?
Well, that's quite interesting for me because I, with all the introspection and the retrospection and all the rest, I realized for that, like my entire life, I was terribly uncomfortable with being on my own, in my own company. And when I look back at my social life, at interesting again, when my husband and I first moved in together, he immediately got transferred to Germany for what turned out to be like a year and a half. And we had moved to the close suburbs, but I had been living in the center of Paris, in my house of fun with my girlfriends. And then we moved in together. And to get a bigger place, we moved out of Paris. And then he was away at work abroad. And I was finding myself coming home for the first time ever live by myself. And now I see that I was working. I stayed at work later and later and later and later to avoid coming back to be on my own. And when I came back to be on my own, then I would have my wine with me as well. So I was never quite on my own. But it's very interesting that it was something that I just, like, I was always out. When I was younger, I was always out, and I just couldn't do that being on my own. And then when I stopped drinking, well, I think I had that like recovery phase where I had terrible anxiety and waking up in the middle of the night. So my sleep was incredible. I was going to bed late. It was incredibly disrupted with the wine, and also with children who weren't sleeping. So I was like just wrecked. So I had probably about a month of just like going to bed at 9 o'clock and sleeping the whole way through just to recover. So when I had recovered, I felt again that discomfort of, what am I supposed to do now? Like, and so I was like doing the podcast and reading the books, and like, I think it was like, it was one saying it's okay. It's okay to actually be on your own. Not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And that, well, now that I've stopped drinking, now this is where I'm going to have to like listen to all the stuff that I've been,
trying not to hear,
the white noise,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's really common. I think the two most common things I hear in my practice are that resonates with me. I always say I drank to avoid the social anxiety of being with myself. but also the other one I hear a lot is that women, and this also for sure was in play for me, is that women just can't sit still. So they really struggle with not doing. They have a really hard time not doing. And so the drinking gives them a reason to stop doing and to sit still. And so for a lot of women, that's a real struggle after they take the alcohol away. It's figuring out like how to sit still. But then if you also have the piece that you and I had where we don't particularly enjoy our own company, then that becomes even more problematic. I remembered I would be escaping every night. I didn't like sitting still. I would go to the almost every night. I would get in the car and go somewhere and fill up a cart with stuff and then empty the cart at the door, like not purchase anything. I'd spend an hour wandering around somewhere, putting like pillows and like things in a cart, and then I'd take them all out and then I'd come home. Or I'd go.
Security's there going, crazy lady there.
Yeah, that crazy lady's back. Yeah, she's back again. And I remember joking with one of my clients one time. She said, yeah, isn't it amazing how many people actually go out after 6 p.m.? Because when you go out, at night, you're alcohol free, you realize, oh, there's this whole world of people who actually don't drink at night and who actually go out and do things, do errands, do things. Anyway, okay. So you found This Naked Mind, and eventually you decided, what caused you to decide to get certified as a coach?
You know what? It just felt like a natural progression in the thing. Like, what else can I learn? And like, I just felt like, because I really did feel so lonely when I was when I was drinking. And it's like, as you know, as an expat, you have that certain loneliness when the excitement wears off, when, you know, when you start thinking about your family at home, you get this loneliness. And then the loneliness that alcohol creates, because you end up distancing yourself from the people you care about the most, and from yourself and all the rest. Like, I've gone off on a tangent now. What?
That's okay.
So
We're both, we can always just play the perimenopause menopause card on this podcast. So that's all we do. We just hashtag menopause it and we move on. Doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. I have a question for you about the expat community in Paris. Do you find that you naturally gravitate towards other women who are also expats in Paris, or are most of your friends native Parisians, or is it a blend because of your
circumstances? Now it's a blend. It's a blend. Yeah. And I guess that is largely thanks to the kids, and, you know, putting myself out there, trying to, like, you know, make friends, which I guess was a little, when I did, it was a little bit difficult for me. I guess my friends that I made, my like Anglo friends outside of work that I made here, are that was all with my social life, and I'm still like close to my friends. A lot have moved away again, because I'm, like I said, I'm a lifer, and they were, you know, going through. But it's a mix now. It's a mix.
And how do you find it being a non-drinker? Do you find it, what are some of the challenges? Are there specific challenges to being a non-drinker as a Parisian now, or as an expat?
Well, I think it's coming, but the alcohol-free sort of, if you want to call it a movement, or the alcohol-free options, they're coming. There's an alcohol-free bottle shop in Paris now, which is kind of amazing. Yeah, did you hear that?
I heard from Martha.
The news made it to Canada.
It has. There isn't one really here where I live, but there are sections of shops that are dedicated to alcohol-free drinks, which is great, and those are growing, and there are certain places where you can get a really good selection. But no, I heard from Martha, because our friend, our mutual coach friend Martha, spends a lot of time in Paris, and she had sent me something about that bottle shop. That's cool. Yeah.
But it's interesting. But it's like, no matter where you are in the world, it's awkward the first couple of times, because you're like, everybody's looking at me. What are they thinking? And this sort of thing. And I remember, like, one of the first times we went out to friends, and for the apéro, and I guess I must have been talking to them about it before anyway. So anyway, I'm not drinking. And they had out the beautiful, like, stemware and the champagne and all the rest. Like, and I was like, no. If you have some sparkling water, I'll have it. And then there was an awful sort of, it was quite funny, but there was also like, but what are we supposed to put the water in? And then there was a big sort of, calamity to get this champagne glass away and get another glass to put on the table. And oh my goodness. And it was the drama, and I was like, it's okay.
I'd like that glass, please.
And I was just like, yeah. So, but people get used to it. And like, it's more expensive to buy a Coke than it is a glass of wine, but. So,
definitely there. It is there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what do you think about this? Like, you'd introduced this concept of home to me, and I thought it was just such an interesting focus for a conversation, because I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about home and what home means. And I've moved a fair bit, I guess, in my life. And when I was a kid, I lived in Germany for a few years, and I, moved across the country after law school and lived out there on the other side of Canada for 13, which is like basically like moving across Europe. It's so, how big Canada is. I was very far away from my family for 13 years. And then moved back to Nova Scotia, which is where I'm from now. And then just recently sold the home that my kids grew up in here and moved into the city to a totally new type of space and community. And so I've been reflecting on this idea of home since you raised it as a topic too, and how it applies to me. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that as an expat, and how do you see that idea of home, and how do we make home, how do we make our home?
I think that goes back as again to that feeling of being okay with your own company. Because you can love the place you can love the superficial, it's gorgeous, isn't the food great, whatever, that you can love the things about it. But if you're not feeling the feels of being there, like I am enjoying this, I am living this, then you're always going to feel like foreign in your own home. And that's a bit how I felt until I stopped drinking, because it was always that I always had that kind of how would you describe it? It's a bit like a veil over everything. You're never quite living it for yourself. It's like almost as an expat, you can be ticking things off the list, and you can be like doing all the things and buying the stuff and meeting the people. But when you can't sit at the end of the day and sort of go, I feel good in my own skin. It's you never feel at home, And it is the things, it's the things as well, but the things all have an association. And when we moved out of our first home that we had bought together, our first house, where I had all the babies, and when the whole place was empty, I took an hour and I went. I don't know how you managed in your place the way you were for so long, but I had to go in through every room to kind of say goodbye, and to like relive those memories and those feelings I had, like when I was, just things like the bathroom, when I was like, I went into labor with Liam and the cat was sitting on the edge of the bath, and things like that. And just like random things. And we had the party there, and the garden, and that's where the cat threw up. And
I know it's such a process to do that, for sure. Did you move when you were still drinking, or after you'd stopped drinking?
When we were still drinking, yeah. And it was another.
Go ahead, Susan.
No, I was going to say, and then it was like that sort of. We were moving to the new house. Well, I'll move to this new house and I'll experience it better, because I'm not going to be drinking when I move in there, or we're not going to be drinking so much, kind of thing. Yet that that had nothing. The actual place had nothing to do with it. It was all to do with me and how I wanted to feel.
I think that's interesting. The reason I asked that question is because I think I had a different experience moving out of the family home this spring than I would have had if I had still been drinking. I think it was very different, because I do think I loved how you described what it means to be home. I do think that home is actually just a place within ourselves. It's not a physical space per se, although of course we can find a comfortable space to live. But I think I had done a lot of the work, because I would have been like about 4.5 years alcohol free by the time we moved. So I'd done a lot of work, like on things, and processed a lot of things and thought about a lot of things and all of that. And so I didn't really do that. Interestingly, when we left the house, I said to my husband, I don't want to go back. And I have never been back. And we have friends who live like next door, and we've been to see them, but I don't go see the house. And I didn't do that thing I thought I would. I thought I would cry my way through each of the rooms. And interestingly, I didn't. Now, I did do a lot of grieving about my kids were leaving at the same time. So there were all these other things changing too. But I wonder if it was because I just felt, I felt very, at that point in time, very secure in who I was, like, because I had done, again, I had done that work, and I was very happy to be in my own company for the first time in forever. And so maybe that changed that a little bit for me. I'm not sure. I'll tell you a little story that's kind of cool about home that I was thinking about after you raised this topic. And that is that my kids came home for Thanksgiving this year. And of course, we moved into this new place, but my children had never seen this new place because we were in their childhood home until they went to university, and they both went away to university. So they knew we were moving in here. And I think maybe they'd seen the outside of they knew the physical location, but they didn't know the spot at all. And so when they came home for Thanksgiving, it was the first time they had actually stayed in this new house, and the first night that they had not been in their old house, but in the same city, if that makes sense. So I was quite stressed about it as a mother. Like, how's this going to feel to them? Are they going to feel like it's home? And I didn't say that to them, obviously. We went about our business, and we had Thanksgiving dinner with my family, and we all did all the things, together. And when I was driving my daughter back to the airport on Monday morning, I said, "What was your favorite part about the weekend?" And she said that nothing has changed.
Oh,
Isn't that bananas? Because like so much has changed, but her sense of what home is hasn't, I guess, which made me so happy as a parent. That she felt that way. I think it's such an interesting.
So why?
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask you why you don't want to go back to the house, even though you're.
Yeah, I don't know. I almost feel like for me, that move was very symbolic. It was sort of metaphorical for me because of the timing of everything. It was me. We have wonderful memories from that house, like wonderful memories. I absolutely loved living there. It was a beautiful house, and I had done so much work on the inside, and all of these things that all this effort had been put into making that a home. But I think for me, I was so focused on transitioning into empty nesting and to starting this new part of my life and having something to actually celebrate and call my own and feel really positive about, that I think I must have known that wouldn't serve me. I don't know. I can't explain it. Maybe not. Maybe it's just, there may be some other explanation, but I think the only way I can rationalize it is that I just felt like I was ready to leave. And I had done a lot of processing of all of this before that date. As I said, like we had done our last trip, family trip to Paris. We were actually in Paris this summer. We'd done that. We had done, I'd gotten my kids all packed and moved. And there was a lot of like, everyone was transitioning too. So maybe that was part of it, right? Like everyone had something big happening. My kids were going off for the first time, and that was so exciting. And I just wanted it to be good and exciting. I didn't want it to be sad and morose. So maybe that was part of it. I don't know. But also the writing, that I like to write, and I'd done a lot of writing about it too, which I think helped. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm not sure. But I do feel like it would have been so much more tragic for me if I'd still been drinking, because I wouldn't have, as we were just talking about, I wouldn't have allowed myself to feel the things and process it. I would have just sort of numbed myself out with the drinking. And so I don't know that I would have been able to move into a place that felt so, because actually it's been pretty great, Susan. Like I thought it was going to be horrible when my kids left, but actually I miss them, but it's pretty fantastic. Like the freedom's pretty awesome. There are some parts we're still trying to figure out, but mostly we're having a pretty great time. So I think I just wanted to get there. And yeah, I don't know. But I definitely agree with you that there's a lot to be said for home not being a physical place, but a feeling. More of a feeling that you have. And I think my daughter's comment supports that.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah. And so the other thing that kind of goes along with this that you had raised, which I just thought was brilliant, is this idea of identity, which is different from home, but I think probably some overlap there. Like this idea of, you said, who am I if I'm not Irish, a mum, a drinker, an expat, this list of all of these roles that you have. And I wonder if you can speak to that for a second.
Yeah. Well, I guess the fact that that it's like a list of things, it does even explain that, in that we're not just one thing. We're many things, in inverted commas. We've many layers with the cry onion. But I, for a long time, like I think I was like limiting myself to one sort of behavior or one way of feeling or being, because I thought that I had this sort of like box of, this is how I am because I'm Irish. This is how I am because I'm 50. This is how I am because I'm a mom. And it's when you stop realizing that those are other people's expectations and you're just taking them on for yourself, then you can like take the bits of all those identities and put them together and go, yay, look at me.
I love that.
Okay, I'm too old to be lip syncing on Instagram, but sure, anyway, whatever,
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You guys have to follow Susan on sharp.sense.coaching. Have I got that right on Instagram, Susan?
Yeah.
Her posts are so funny. I actually, like, one time I almost peed. I was laughing so hard. But this is very true, though. This idea of how these identities, I'm putting that in air quote, these labels, of who we are can really keep us in a bit of a box and keep us restricted. And I've said to many clients over the years, come to me, and we're oftentimes, the women that I work with are generally all in midlife, and oftentimes they're struggling with identity. This is a piece that we work on in coaching, and I'll ask them who they are, and they'll give me a list, and it's a list of roles. I'm a sister, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a doctor, I'm a mother, I'm a, daughter, I'm a coach, whatever the things are. And I always say, okay, do that again, but you can't list anything that you are. Like any roles that you, like any of your actual roles. I just want to know who you actually are. So none of the things you do, it can't be something you do. It has to be who you are. And that is a real struggle for a lot of women. And I get that, because that's exactly what I was struggling with. And probably one of the main reasons I was drinking so much is that I just had no sense of who I actually was. I knew all the things I could do and do very well. Quitting drinking was not one of them. But the other things I was doing very well at the time. But I just didn't have that sense of who I was, who I truly was.
And you have to start with how you feel. When you take away all those labels, it's like, so what is actually like me, raw me? What am I like? What's going on? Yeah. And it's a difficult place to start when you've been ignoring it for like your entire life.
Yeah, it really, really is. If you're listening to this podcast, you're thinking, yeah, that's me. I don't actually know who I am. And whenever anyone asks me who I am, I always list all of these things that I do. Start with like a rapid fire exercise of just trying to list like as many things as you can in a minute that you do well. And don't judge yourself for any of them. Just write them all down. And I don't mean like activities that you do well, I guess. I mean attributes that you have that are sort of positive attributes. So I'm kind, I'm generous, I'm careful, I'm nurturing, I'm smart, I'm whatever. List qualities. That's a better way to describe it of yourself. It's a good place to start, but it is a tricky thing. And the nice thing about it, though, is that once you figure out that, and that we do this, of course, as coaches, oftentimes we do values work with clients and help them to get a sense of the things that really make them unique as a human being, which are not the things they do. They're the things that they inherently are. And when we do that work, it can be really, really grounding for women, because now you can do whatever, but you're always the same person. Right? So you know who you are, no matter what the things are that you're doing, those things remain in place. quite philosophical and esoteric, our conversation. Oh, I think it's the common plight of women in midlife. I think it's a really, really common place for us to end up in, where we've just been consumed with doing for a couple of decades out of necessity, and have not spent very much time thinking about who we are as we do all of those things. And then some of those doing the things start getting taken away, right? Things change, like parents die and suddenly we're not daughters anymore, or marriages end, or children leave, or we stop drinking and now we're not drinkers anymore. But those, as we change the things that we do, I think it becomes more obvious when we don't actually know who we are and all of that. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. And it's like, and it's again, it's all the plowing through everything, like to get all the stuff done and to be all the everything to everybody else. And then when you stop to think, hang on, how do I actually feel? I'm actually a bit angry. I'm a bit pissed off by all of this. I'm actually a bit like lonely. I'm a bit, and annoyed, just was one of mine. And is that the identity that you really want? Like, are you like, what can we do to like, well, use those feelings, but to get to the ones that you really want, like, and make that your identity.
I always say, like, are you showing up in the way that you want in the world? And when you're behaving in a way, or you're feeling something that doesn't feel like it's serving you, how can you turn the volume down on that thing and turn the volume up on the thing that does feel better? Because we all have all of those things. We all get angry and annoyed and all the other things that you listed. And that's not who we are. It's just, those are just emotions. But so what do you do when you feel an emotion? Like, let's take the annoyance one, because you said that's you often feeling annoyed. What do you do with that? Like, how do you process that now that you're not drinking and that you're more aware of it?
Well, when I stopped drinking, I became aware of a lot of things that I had been ignoring and not didn't even realize were there. And so when I started stopping, sort of becoming aware of what was actually happening in, like, here in my body, and like feeling that kind of, and like, hang on, I'm taking a second to kind of go, oh, right, this is an actual emotion I'm feeling. It's a like, look at all those sensations I'm having, and taking a minute to kind of go, okay, I'm feeling that. So if I'm feeling that, and I'm going to like project this onto the kids or whoever, I need to take a second and like process it for myself before I throw it onto them. And taking that time for myself, be with myself, and in that moment. And again, the not liking being with yourself, like taking that minute and actually sitting with that and kind of going, okay, what's going on really? Like, why is it really that I'm feeling a bit neglected today, or that, am I like physically tired? I need to go sit in a quiet room for 5 minutes, in the dark. So it's like, it was a complete revelation to me, when I stopped drinking, like all these like sensations and feelings, and stopping the automatic, like whatever flying off the handle, and automatic, I've had enough, I'm having a glass of wine, kind of thing.
I've noticed that too. I think
it takes a bit of practice.
Sure does.
And
and a lot of self.
I'm still practicing.
A lot of not judging yourself for having like when you notice the thing, because oftentimes we notice the thing and then it doesn't feel good to us, right? It feels like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this way, and we start judging ourselves for having whatever that emotion is. That's the hardest part for me, is not immediately getting into self-criticism about an emotion. And so I always remind myself that it's just a neurochemical response to a thought, and I actually have no control over that. Sometimes that helps me get out of judgment. Like, okay, no, this is just biochemical. It's just like something's happening in my body. It's causing me to physically feel this way.
It's like physical.
And it's not my fault. It's actually a good thing, because it's just signaling to me that whatever's happening is important, and I should stop and slow down and actually like think about it and pay attention to it. So that helps me, but I still do what every other woman does, which is start beating myself up as soon as it feels like a objectively negative emotion. But I'm getting so much better at it. And it was impossible when I was still drinking. It just never happened.
Exactly.
Like,
and then you go back with the mega judgment then after that for like,
oh yeah, of course. Right.
Like,
Then you drink and then you're just, boy, can we be awful to ourselves when we're in that cycle. So, well, Susan, this has been such a lovely conversation. I thought it would be. Thank you for coming on. Do you want to tell people, I know you've got, you do have a coaching business. So you have your day job, but then you also coach. And where can people find out more about you?
My website is sharpsensecoaching.com. All one word. And like you said, on Instagram, sharp.sense.coaching. And I do one-to-one coaching for people who want to get into some new territory with their drinking. So
amazing. Okay, well, I'll put both of those links in the show notes for sure, Susan.
Thank you, Wendy,
for coming to talk to me about being an alcohol-free expat and finding home again. It's been a lovely conversation.
You've been listening to Bite Size Balance with your host, Wendy McCallum. As a certified Naked Mind coach, I help busy women like you find freedom from alcohol. If you're starting to question your relationship with alcohol, you'll want to listen to my free 3-part video series where I address the top 3 myths around why you think you need to drink. Sign up now at www.wendymccallum.com/myths. That's www.wendymccallum.com/myths.